thought I'd start back here this morning because this is one of my favorite places to sit. We have this little sitting area in the corner, and this is the time of year where the azaleas absolutely go crazy. So you can see azaleas kind of everywhere you look. We also have the clematis blooming, and the rhododendrons getting close. The irises, the yellow irises, little Dutch iris, are just beginning to bloom. And over here, a beautiful rose. I don't know how a rose that gets this little sun does so well, but it's absolutely beautiful rose. I inherited it, so I have no idea what variety it is, but it has this dark pink outside, and as it opens up, shows its pale pink inside. Absolutely beautiful. Now, there's a rhododendron that's just about spent. But a couple of other things that are very interesting that are native plants that came with this yard. First one, this is called a lot of different things. I just refer to it as Carolina allspice. It's supposed to have like a strawberry banana kind of a smell, but I can't detect it. Maybe my nose is just a little less good than other people's, but it will turn in kind of an urn-shaped seed head that will stay on. But it is a native plant, and I'll put the scientific name on the screen so you can see that. Beautiful azalea here. Nice big flower with a darker pink throat. And here are the little yellow irises that are just now beginning to bloom. Now I want to take you over to see this little tree. Now, we bought this house almost exactly 9 years ago, and I continue to identify plants. And this thing was pretty nondescript, but the previous owner had obviously very carefully placed this. I don't know how in the world he could get it planted. It's right next to the hackberry tree, which has unbelievable roots, so I don't know how in the world he got it to be planted here. But it has a pretty nondescript leaf, not a lot happening there. But I was able to identify it this year because it's actually blooming. Now, this is called a fringe tree. I will put, sometimes it's called old man's beard, but I'll put the scientific name on the screen. I'm not sure I can pronounce it. But they are dioecious, which means they have male trees and female trees. And it's a slow-growing native tree. And the females will put on a berry in the fall, evidently a really pretty blue berry that the birds like. We'll see. I have no idea. I've never seen flowers, much less berries, but I'll keep an eye on it this year. It's very nondescript, but interesting to see the flowers. Now, right next to it, I should have come out a week ago, this is a hawthorn tree. And up close you can see it has a pretty little white flower. And my hawthorn tree in Colorado did get berries on it. I've never seen berries on this particular tree. I have another one on the other side, and again, no berries I've ever seen. My hydrangeas are doing very well, covered with buds this year, so I should have a really good show in a few weeks. The Spanish bluebells are pretty well past their prime, so I'll be cutting back the flower stalks, the spent flower stalks, pretty soon, and we'll leave the leaves for a little bit longer. Hostas are coming out nicely. This is a very shady part of my yard. Here is another native plant, Virginia Sweetspire. Again, I'll put the scientific name on it. This one was an absolute volunteer. Now back behind it, you're going to see a mess back there. See that? Those are sometimes called hurricane lilies. Lycoris is the scientific name, and it sends up this mess of leaves that turns yellow and ratty, and I have to clean it out, and then it will bloom in August. Here are the new heucherella that I planted, also commonly called foam flower. And so this guy is putting out a little flower. We'll see what he looks like before too much longer. And the heuchera, I think these are caramel is the variety. I did plant all of these. And here's my little tiny one that I didn't think had made it, but he's growing slowly. And we're getting ready to see some foxglove. I'm excited about that. And a transplanted fern is doing well. I do have a blank spot back in there where I removed all the ivy, so I'm still contemplating what to do with that area. Now, here's another fun thing that happens in early May. Peonies. They bloom at different times. This is always the first one to bloom. These great big pink blooms. And the second one to bloom is the one with the red. I guess we're early enough in the day that it's not opened up yet, but has a very interesting throat. I only see 2 blooms on there, but they're nice, healthy blooms. And our third peony that's getting ready to bloom is this white with the red streaks in him, and he's got some blossoms. We should see him soon. And again, another rose bush. Rose, it looks like a standard almost. There's one that's open, and another one up there that's just beginning to open. Azalea here. Now, more azaleas on this side. This is my larger Virginia Sweetspire, and I showed you last week. I showed you the buds that were just beginning to come out, and these are getting ready to bloom. Ugh, this is our mess. These are the little, I think you call them catkins that come off the oak trees. Such a mess everywhere, and I think we're all allergic to it, so it's quite the mess. Now, if any of you have an azalea that puts on buds and then does not bloom real well, that was the story behind this one right here. This is my last blooming azalea. I've mentioned him before, but he always kind of gave up the ghost. It's like he put on all these buds and then didn't do anything. So I did a little research, and they say that if they're not getting enough water, that might cause it. So I made a point of watering this thing quite well, and I've had good results. So I'm going to say that's a really good, simple way to correct an azalea that might be giving you a little bit of fits. Now back here we've got a little bit of a mess happening because we've got a project going on. But I transplanted some of these azaleas. Oh, here's Kirby. He follows me around like a puppy dog. Anyway, this was transplanted from a larger pot because I needed the large pot. and I found some coleus at Home Depot. So I put 5 coleus in there. I'll keep them clipped. And the 6th one I just stuck in the ground there. I thought, oh, it'd be fun to have a little bit of red. But this part is doing quite well with the ferns and the hostas and the sedums. This was a really very boring, well, it had nothing in it. So we've had to plant everything in here because all that was here was the vinca. Now, I brought you back over to here, the ugly spot. This is where the pond's gonna go. So this next week, one of my goals is to start digging out these hostas that are huge here. This is gonna be a lot of division. But here is what I really refer to as the shade garden. And here's my clematis. It's a beautiful, big flower. I mean, these are huge flowers. And the thing I learned last year was don't cut it back. This one actually blooms on old canes. And for some reason it's blooming back there where nobody can see it, which I think is pretty selfish of it. A little shy. And here are those ferns that a month ago there was almost nothing here, and now the gargantuan ferns coming out. And here's my little spiderwort. I have a couple of spiderworts blooming in here. And now I'm going to go back and show you, well, here again, more azaleas. So you can see as the pink azalea, the darker pink, the lighter pink with the throat, and there is a very small white azalea that I think his blooms are spent. And here's what happened to my pot. This is the caria that was on the side of my house that has been blocking the walkway on the side of the house for years, and my husband keeps hacking at it, so it does look like it's been in a battle and lost. All chopped back. I'll need to work on it, but we finally decided I would let him move it. And so I thought it would be pretty by the pond because it keeps these pretty green leaves all year. Ugh, it's had a rough transplant. When you have something that's that mature, it's very difficult to transplant it. But I thought being in a pot and being babied for a little while, I'll see how much survives. But you can see a lot of it's not going to make it. But this plant grows off of suckers, so I figured it would survive even if it looked a little battered for a while. But we'll get that. And here is the update on the side yard. So everything that I've planted is looking good. These were my bare root Francis Williams hostas, a cluster of them. They're supposed to get quite large, that's why he is all alone here. I needed to give him some space. These were ones I transplanted from up front to give me some white pops back in the shady part. Fern that I've planted, and most of what's along here was already here. So what's occurred? This is the spot where the wooden platform used to be. That has come out. I was optimistic that it would have pathway underneath it, but it does not. So the pathway is going to have to be rebuilt. And here we're going into the construction zone. Starting to work on this area, and we have a very primitive retaining wall that's starting to give us some problems. It's bowing. I don't know if you can tell how much it's bowing from this angle, but there's a shorter one down here that's just really spilling out, and so my husband wants to fix that. And He's going to be cutting it out. There's our rock that's going to be in the base, and took out the piece of wood that was there. And looks pretty messy right now, but we're going to see what we can do to make this look a little tidier. Now, what was needed for this retaining wall was, first of all, cinder blocks. Now, these cinder blocks were recycled from the other side of the yard. They were taken out when we expanded the pathway on the other side. So everything is recycled, which we love doing that. The next thing he had to buy was a tool to actually cut that metal retaining wall that had been there. And this is the section where that short piece was. The next thing he had to get was some paver base and some crushed rock. So the first thing he did was to cut off the section that was about 5 feet long, cut back behind it to create a flat perpendicular surface, and he lined up his bricks. You notice he is using a broken one there, but that'll make a nice smooth transition, not a real straight 90-degree one, but a little more organic looking. So he has that all cut away and leveled, and he uses a tamping tool to get that ready. The next thing he does is he applies the paver base, and this is just from the big box store, and you put that underneath once you've leveled it, and then put the cinder blocks on top. Do notice that this cinder block is there's about 2 inches of space between the dirt, the perpendicular dirt, and the cinder block, so he can control that. And then he is filling it with the soil that he cut away. So we're putting soil in this area because I will be adding plants on top of it, and I'll show you when I actually do that. So plants will be growing there because cinder block is not the most attractive thing in the world. Now, this is a section where he removed the taller piece. So this is going to be 2 cinder blocks high. He cut out, again, another little 5-foot section, cut away so it was perpendicular, added the base, and put the cinder blocks in. Back behind it, he has used the crushed rock so that the water will flow. If the water doesn't flow, you can have a buildup of the soil and it will expand and knock the entire thing over. And again, filling it up with the cinder block itself up with soil, and we'll be putting some compost in it so it will be nice and tidy. And here you can see they are staggered. They're not all lined up. They're staggered a little bit like you do bricks. And you can clearly see the paver base there, the 90-degree angle, and the rock behind it. And here it is from a little bit different angle. Our cinder block retaining wall for now is going to go as far as the existing cinder blocks that we have will take us. And as soon as that is done, he will work on the pathway and make sure that's nice so I can get everything looking pretty. Now Kirby and I are going to join you in the front yard to finish our tour. One of my favorite spectacles of the year is this horse chestnut tree. And beneath it, immediately beneath it, you can see a pink rose bush that kind of echoes those colors. Now right here in front of me is a dark pink azalea. And to the left of the screen there, you'll see kind of a more purpley pink azalea that's blooming well. And next to that is the yellow deciduous azalea. And again, the Spanish bluebells are in decline. But here, previews of coming attractions. One of my favorite things, I have a lot of favorites in this yard, but this This is the mountain laurel, and the buds are so interesting. They have like little balloon-like buds that will open up, and they are all over this shrub, and they will come after the azalea has lost his excitement. Okay, ending up here in the front yard, a little closer look at the tree. We're kind of shady up here in the morning, but that bird's quite happy. And then over here, in the tail end of the Spanish bluebells, I planted a little columbine because I thought the colors would be pretty here. I have another columbine over here, so I thought it would be nice, and it's a different color, but I thought it would be nice to kind of have them a little bit balanced. And here are the Purple Sensation allium. It came from Color Blend, and this is my lupin. And this is such an unusual plant for this area. In Colorado, I had them all over the place. They would go wild by the side of the road. But here, the person at the nursery told me he had never heard of someone having one that bloomed, that had been grown from seed and rebloomed year after year. They have to kind of force them in a greenhouse to get them to bloom. But you can see how beautiful this is going to be. And that purple color in this bed makes this a really pretty spot, but you can see how pretty the structure is on the bud before it blooms. And then when it blooms, I'll show you that that'll be another week or two before it's really taking off. And another little bit of purple in here is the hardy geranium. And you can see, if you're familiar with our house, we have added lattice to create a climbing surface for the scarlet honeysuckle, and it is really going to town on both sides. And we planted some clematis too, but we planted bare roots, so I'm not seeing anything particularly happening, but this honeysuckle is doing quite well. And here are the buds on this columbine, aquaregia. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, irises. Now, last fall, I transplanted this iris in particular. And irises are supposed to be transplanted before Labor Day. That's the general rule of thumb. And so these guys, I planted in October, so I did not expect to see a thing. But this one's blooming quite nicely. It's a little tucked in behind here, but he has a number of nice flower heads on him. And that one was in yellow. Here's one with purple and white. This is my bulb bed. I'm waiting for the leaves to pass before I clean them out. And this one is kind of I don't know how I feel about this iris. Somebody probably thinks it's absolutely the most beautiful thing ever, but it looks kind of rusty to me. Here's another yellow one over here. Anyway, Kirby, you ready to go back inside? Anyway, thanks so much for joining us in this early May tour, and I'll see you next time.